Okay, well, we are promising an on-time delivery tonight, so I will proceed without further ado, and we'll continue to welcome people as they're able to click on the link and join us. Welcome. Hello, I'm Shiloh Todorov, and I'm the Development Director for Move to Prosper. But before that, I was a volunteer for the program, and as many of you are probably very well aware, it is not every day that you get to go to work for somewhere that you are spending your free time. So I feel very privileged to be a part of this team. I'd like to welcome everyone to tonight's discussion about why we need inclusive housing in our region, what Move to Prosper is doing about it, and what we, each of us in our community, can do. I'd like to start off by thanking our sponsors, the organizations on the screen who have joined us to create the Building Inclusive Communities discussion for our region. And along with them, a very special thank you to Kathy Fox of Community Strategy Partners for all of her work in pulling this together. Kathy created a whole series of panels tomorrow that are built on the work of tonight's featured speaker, Rick Kahlenberg. And you tonight have been invited to preview those discussions. So we have a mix of friends on the call. We have people who have already become donors to this innovative project, and we thank you for your vision and investment. We have people who have given unlimited support in the form of their time and talent, and we thank you for making us a success. We have a lot of people checking us out for the very first time. Maybe a friend or a colleague asked you to get to know us, and we're so glad you said yes. For those in particular who said yes to my invitation to get to know us, you have to know how touched I am that you're with us and taking the time tonight. I think you'll agree this is a very innovative solution to a number of thorny issues that our community faces. We hope you're here because, like us, you want to help us solve one of the region's biggest challenges: how to create pathways for children and families to flourish, which means finding new ways to create affordable housing opportunities and inclusive communities. We have always witnessed firsthand how some neighborhoods price out lower income residents. This wouldn't be so problematic, except that neighborhoods with more expensive housing also tend to have more amenities like high quality housing stock, highly rated schools, safe neighborhoods, outdoor parks, grocery stores, abundant shopping, job opportunities, you name it. And the research bears out what we see in our own lives where we live. A zip code where your children grow up has a lasting and determinative effect on your lifetime earnings. Many of us on this call know about the work of Raj Chetty. His research reveals that social mobility, maybe what you think of as the American dream, doesn't work for all people. And Chetty is with Harvard's Opportunity Insights. The research he's done, in fact, inspired the program that has Moved to Prosper. Chetty's shown that for millions of Americans, being born in a lower income and poorly resourced zip code is pretty much a life sentence to staying in a lower income and poorly resourced neighborhood. There is very little upward mobility that's been documented. So it's now my pleasure to introduce to you Jacquie Bickel. She is a Move to Prosper board member. She is my right hand on the fundraising and marketing committee as chair. And in her free time, she is a creator and chair of Columbus chapter of Conscious Capitalism. She's a vice president for Improving Columbus. Jacquie, thanks for being with us.
Welcome, everybody. It's good to see so many faces. I'm happy we get to gather still, even if it is virtual. As Shiloh mentioned, I'm really excited to be a part of this movement and the design of Move to Prosper in general. It inspired me so much to dedicate my time and resources to this. Over the 100 families that we are going to help with this program. As most of you know, Move to Prosper helped 10 single moms with young children move to higher resource neighborhoods. With 3 years of rental support, they could afford to rent in those zip codes. You also heard Shiloh's reference that Moving to Prosper gives kids significantly higher earning potential over their lifetime, the amount of $300,000 or more. The rental support and agreement intense monthly coaching, which I find a fascinating piece of this program, to inform and support the women as they navigate their neighborhoods and schools. Individual coaching and critical component, increasing stability for the family by offering financial, budgeting, and personal education and job development. as well as health and wellness programming. We have a 2-generation approach. By coaching these mothers, they can then teach what they have learned to their children, and it's working. We've seen this work in the past. The children and moms are flourishing despite the effects that the pandemic has had in their lives. And this brings me to our first special guest this evening, Tehani, who is a Move to Prosper mom. Tehani, do you want to share a little bit about your story and how Move to Prosper has influenced you?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jackie. Well, my name is Tehani Morales, and I am, as Jackie mentioned, one of the Move to Prosper moms. We are going on into our 3rd year, thanks COVID, of the Move to Prosper program. I have 3, I hate to call them young ones. I have 2 young adults and a kindergartner this year. This is her first year in school. When we applied to the Move to Prosper program a little over 3 years ago, we were homeless, living with family, well, between 2 families, my sisters and my mom's, and had just left a really, really bad private landlord situationship. It was a blessing. We were able to move out of someone else's home, and I had a very small baby at the time, so she's in kindergarten now, but she was just 2. She was just 2 and homeless at the time. So we have been able to since attain our own permanent housing. I have gotten a better job, finished a degree, including some certifications. I am now working with Columbus State Community College, not only in recruiting, but also community outreach.
Tehani, share with me, I know we talked about this earlier, but share some of the valuable aspects that you found with the coaching.
I have an accountability partner. She's my coach, but she's an accountability partner. I can say, well, you know what, I've accomplished X goal, and this is my next goal. And she will say, okay, well, what are your plans? What are your steps? And then next time we meet, well, which one of those steps did you accomplish? And if I fail for any reason, what happens? Do you need to change those goals? Is there another way? What did you do? Or what happened in life to stop that? And are you going to get back up? And we're going to make this work again. She's also been able to say, okay, hey, something's wrong. At any time, something's wrong. What happened? And instead of, as we all tend to panic about the little things, I don't panic anymore. I just kind of talk it through. Even if I just talking it through to myself or writing it down in a journal, figuring out what the next steps are. How do you correct a problem that you have no control over?
And I think another aspect of it too is she was able to, that you mentioned before, highlight a lot of resources that you didn't know were available prior. Is that right?
Absolutely. Some of the resources. So I've had a decent job. As you know, there is definitely a huge gap in what the poverty line looks like from a government perspective and what the poverty line with 3 kids actually feels like. So once you reach a certain threshold, there are no resources. You're just kind of on your own at that point. So I was at a point where there were no resources available to me, but I also would have to choose between feeding the children and paying the rent. So my coach brought a lot of those different resources to light and helped me not only to, if I needed to apply or look for some of those programs, or to figure out how I would go about, not using programs.
I love that. And then lastly, share a little bit about the program that you don't think others know about currently.
I would definitely say the biggest aspect to the program right now is that we've bonded. There were 10 of us to begin with. It was slow going. Being a single mom, you don't tend to lean on anybody because you really don't know who that person is or whether or not they're actually there to talk and help you, or if they're just there because it looks good on paper. So we have found a home with 9 other women just like us. And we help each other, we wait on each other. We become an extended family. So the saying that, it takes a village, we kind of found our village.
I love that. Thanks, Tehani. Thanks for sharing. I think she's a great example of what the program has been able to accomplish, and the aspect of over time building what that community looks like for long-term success. Thanks, Tehani. All right, now on to tonight's program. When people used to hear the phrase DEI, diversity, quality, and inclusion, we often think about the workplace. But what we need DEI lens in housing as well is to reduce the income and race segregation in regions, housings, and neighborhoods. By doing this, this is how we bring the American dream within the reach of more residential and low-wage jobs. This is the expertise and guest tonight, Richard, who we're fortunate to have on this panel, as well as Joy and Kumi Walker, both big supporters of Move to Prosper and our efforts to empower an additional 100 families. Joy Walker and Kumi Walker will now introduce themselves and share a little bit more. On to you, Joy.
All right, thanks so much, Jackie, and thanks to everybody who's tuning in to the call tonight. And thank you for your, weighing in as well, Tehani. I just wanted to start by telling you a little bit about why I was compelled to volunteer with Move to Prosper. I'm a vascular surgeon by training, and of course, a lot of my adult life has been spent in the pursuit of that endeavor. So I was very excited to get involved with Move to Prosper. Certainly initially it was from a professional standpoint. I really believe that a program like Move to Prosper and their approach really has the potential to affect really meaningful and long-lasting health benefits for these families. But on a more personal level, I was really drawn to the emphasis that the program has on empowering women and the focus on making the lives of children better and allowing the women to make decisions for themselves that really can change the trajectory of their family. So certainly as a woman, clearly, and a mother of 2 young kids, that really resonated with me. And I think that's, I can understand that drive. And I think most mothers really can on some level. And then finally, from a selfish perspective, it's my opinion that I feel like Move to Prosper is really starting to make the changes and make the strides that I want to see in my community, in the community where I want to live, where the community I want my children to grow up in, because it's, my belief that having a community that's racially diverse, socioeconomically diverse, really benefits us all. And so that getting involved as a volunteer with Move to Prosper was really a no-brainer from my standpoint. I'll turn it over to Kumi.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kumi Walker, Joy's husband. I'm really excited to be here. Tehani, thank you for sharing your story and kicking us off. I think it really grounds us in the right place. And I think we all need accountability partners in life. I love that. So I'm not from here. So Joy and I moved to the Columbus area January 2018 when I joined Root Insurance. It's a technology insurance company really founded on the principle of using fairness for your rating. The insurance industry as a whole uses a lot of the variables that we're going to talk about, proxy variables, zip code, education, occupation, to determine price. And Root is really about upending that and using things that you can control, like how safe you drive. Since moving here, Joy and I both tried to become more engaged in the community. And one of the things I've had the opportunity to do is to join the board of the Central Ohio Transit Authority. And in that capacity, I've learned a great deal about the inequity of housing in Central Ohio and how that has actually been created a lot of unequal outcomes. based on where you start and where you're born. So it's really consistent with really trying to dive into our guest and his research. And with that, I want to introduce Richard Kahlenberg. So Rick is a director of K through 12 equity and senior fellow at the Century Foundation, a 102-year-old Washington, D.C. based think tank. He has written and edited 17 books, and he has been called the intellectual father of economic integration in K through 12 schooling. His more recent work has centered on how exclusionary zoning laws may have communities and schools more economically segregated, and how increasing inclusive housing can make our communities better. His work has appeared in the New York Times, The Atlantic, and including an article about the success of Move to Prosper on our housing mobility program. Thank you, Rick, for joining us.
Great, thank you so much, Kumi. It's wonderful to be with you and with everyone here. I may look right now like I'm in a police lineup with this background, but I'm actually here in Columbus in a hotel room, and I'll be here Metropolitan Club tomorrow and maybe get the chance to meet some of you in person as well. Thanks.
Excellent. So before I start, I want to just remind our audience attendees, please feel free to post questions that you would like for us to ask to Rick throughout the night. We have some questions. I can kick things off. So Rick, I know that your research really started focused on public schools. Since then, you have expanded it to include housing. Can you talk a little bit about how and why you shifted that focus?
Sure. So for about 25 years, I worked on issues of inequality in education, and particularly focused on economic and racial school segregation, because there's a lot of research to suggest that one of the really best things we can do for students is to give them a chance to attend economically and racially integrated schools rather than high poverty schools. And over time, I just came to see time and time again that the various policies in education that were discussed, public school choice in order to give low-income students a chance to go to middle-class schools, magnet schools in the city to get that economic mix, were really good programs that I continue to support. But at the end of the day, neighborhood schools are really popular. About 3/4 of students attend their local neighborhood school. And so if we want to integrate those schools and give more kids genuine opportunity, then we have to figure out a way to address economic and racial housing segregation. So I've increasingly focused on some of the barriers that are present today, kind of government-created barriers to economic and racial integration of housing. The other reason I've shifted focus somewhat is that there are additional benefits that come from living in an economically and racially integrated neighborhood that are on top of attending an economically and racially integrated school. So in many of our school integration programs, their children will travel, so oftentimes some great distance, to a higher opportunity school, but then return at night to their neighborhood, which may not be entirely safe, may not provide the best environment for kids. And so the beauty of trying to integrate housing and provide more opportunities in the housing realm is that you can address both the inequality that stems from neighborhood and the inequality that stems from schooling.
Thank you for that answer, Rick. As Shiloh kind of alluded to with her introduction, we've got a bit of a mixed crowd here tonight. Some folks who are completely bought in, hook, line, and sinker, and other folks who are just getting to know the program and getting to kind of understand, what's involved. so as an expert in this field, what really drew you to the program? What was really sort of the thing that, or the many things that got you interested in Move to Prosper?
Yeah, so when I first read about this program, I was enormously impressed for a number of reasons. I mean, first is the way in which the program was set up based on the best research. We've also already heard from Shiloh about Raj Chetty's research. It's really groundbreaking and used an experimental design to compare equally motivated families, some of whom had the chance to move to higher opportunity neighborhoods and others who didn't, and found that the results were really tremendous. We know that low income students can perform at high levels and if given the right environment, and Chetty showed that if you move before age 13, that the benefits can be really powerful. And Move to Prosper is designed right on that research base, saying if you have a child who's 13 or under, then we're going to prioritize you in the program, which I thought was very smart. I really like the fact that, as Tehani mentioned, there's a coaching element to this program. I mean, that's something also that research in Seattle and other places has found, that it's not enough to simply provide opportunities to families. If you're plunked into a brand new environment, it makes sense to provide some support. And so Move to Prosper, I think, really does a nice job of doing that. And finally, I kind of as a researcher, I'm intrigued that there was this partnership with Ohio State University to not only use research to identify which neighborhoods would provide the most opportunity, but also provide some evaluation over time. There are so many programs we have, and we don't know how well they're working. And this is one where there's research. And then, really the coup de grace was meeting people like Tehani, who told me their stories. And there are other stories that I included in my report about Move to Prosper. And I'm just so moved by the difference that this program makes in the lives of individual families.
Great, thank you, Rick. So I actually wanted to chime in with just how I think there's a lot of power in place and community. And it is, I am not from here. I'm actually from a town called Columbia, Maryland. It was the first planned community in the United States, built by James Rouse. And really what was revolutionary about Columbia, Maryland at the time was, and this was before the Equal Housing Act, it was really the first brand new suburb in the country that was explicitly, and when I say explicit, James Rouse sent a memo to everyone at his company that was really explicit around how he would not tolerate discrimination. You were not allowed to not show homes to Black or Asian or Latino families, to Jewish families. And it was one of the first communities that ever did that. I honestly believe that that memo today would still be revolutionary. And in many ways, that growing up in an environment that was both diverse, safe, had great public schools, was exposed me to so many different types of people in a warm and welcoming environment, I think has probably had the biggest impact on my life. And I think that is truly consistent with what you can do to change the trajectory of someone's life by moving them into a space where you're not just providing income, you're not money, you're not just providing subsidies to go to different schools, but you're actually relocating families, which I think is just so powerful about Move to Prosper. I'm going to take a question that I have from Carl. Carl says, when improving educational outcomes, why does it take more than providing more resources to lower performing schools?
That's a great question, and there may be others who want to jump in this too. But I'll just say the research suggests that providing additional resources into high poverty segregated schools is a step in the right direction. It's a positive thing. It's something I support. The federal Title I program does that. By itself, it hasn't produced the results that we want. At the end of the day, the Supreme Court was right in Brown versus Board of Education that separate schools for Black and white students, separate schools for rich and poor are inherently unequal. And the way I like to think about it is there are three sets of actors in a school. There are teachers, there are students, and there are parents who are part of the school community. And as long as the schools are economically segregated, they're likely to remain unequal because each of those three groups contributes something to the school environment. So start with students. We know that children are learning from one another all the time, and that it's important to be in an environment where you can learn from your peers. Now, low-income students can teach middle-class kids a lot about what life is like in a different environment. And likewise, middle-class families, kids, because they've had advantages, on average, are higher achieving. And when there's a healthy mix of students from different backgrounds, learning can move in both directions. So there's more learning. The second piece is the parents. And many of you may know that there's lots of research to suggest that when parents are actively involved in a school, that enhances the learning opportunities for everyone in the school. And on average, middle-class parents are about 4 times as likely to be members of the PTA, twice as likely to volunteer in class. To be clear, that's because they have more opportunities. That says nothing about the values of parents who are less disadvantaged. But if you're working several jobs, if you don't have a car to get to the school to volunteer, you may not be able to be as actively involved. And so in economically mixed schools, there are some parents who can support the teachers, volunteer in class, and also kind of be the eyes and ears to make sure everything's going well. And the third piece is the teachers. And if life were fair, the high poverty schools would get the best teachers, but we know on average the opposite happens, that teachers typically consider it a promotion to move from a higher poverty school to a middle class school because the working conditions are a little easier. And so we end up with an inequality in that way too. So I'm for investing more in high poverty schools, but I think at the end of the day, separate is still unequal. And Kumi, is it all right if I jump in with a question for Joy?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. All right, great. I'm so impressed by your background in medicine and all that you're doing. I know I've read about research suggesting that these types of programs can improve health outcomes, but I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about your experiences in this area.
Yeah, thank you. So, I mentioned when we first got started that was initially what drew me to move to Prosper, was this, feeling of mine that these programs really do have the potential to create real and lasting, health benefits for the families that participate. I'll just tell you a little bit about what I do as a vascular surgeon. The people on the call may or may not know, but a lot of the conditions and complications and problems that I treat in my office and in the operating room tend to be the end stages of chronic disease. So it's end stage diabetes, it's end stage heart disease, sort of end stage tobacco abuse. Okay, and we know now there's just mountains of evidence and literature and data and a growing awareness in the medical community about social determinants of health, that there are social influences that start long before a patient ever makes her way to my office that impact these chronic conditions, okay? And so many of them, when you really dig in deep, ultimately go directly back to the zip code, the neighborhood, the community where folks are living. And so what I really started to realize and, think about was that really what I'm treating is end stage poverty. It's sort of end stage denial of access to resources. And that, really, I wanted to start to find a way to address the root cause of that. And I think that Move to Prosper really sort of begins to do that. Ultimately, I want to shut down the pipeline of patients into my office. So Move to Prosper is sort of my early retirement plan, if you will, okay? And I think that we have seen that in the pilot program. With even just a short period of time and a small number of families, we've seen that there have been fewer reported ER visits for things like asthma exacerbations, lower levels of reported toxic stress in the families, which is, clearly related to a whole host of other poor outcomes across the gamut. And I suspect that as this program grows and incorporates more families and we have more time to look at it, we're going to see more and more of these health benefits start to accrue. That's my personal opinion about this. Take, for instance, smoking. If you could get a single child to never begin smoking, that clearly is a lifelong benefit for that person. But there's a clear community and societal benefit to ensuring that. So that's, one of the things that really I love about Move to Prosper. It's got this comprehensive sort of nature in the way it approaches the problem, but also sort of multifactorial benefits that we're yet to learn about all of them, I believe. Tehani, I'd love to hear your take on this. Were there, did you feel like your family and your children really saw any health benefit? And if so, why do you think that was?
I would definitely have to say yes. Not only in my kids, but also myself. And say hi, Natalia, because you're dying to say hi. This is my youngest, who's in kindergarten. Go ahead, say hello.
Hi.
So my middle child was diagnosed with a severe asthma at age 3. I was in and out of the ER, specifically children's, often. We would be at one of the smaller ERs, be transported by an ambulance at 2 a.m. because I could not get his asthma under control. Since we have moved into the Move to Prosper program, I have gone from probably 8 to 9 ER visits a year to none whatsoever. His asthma no longer acts up. He went from using his inhaler daily or every other day to not needing one unless it's extreme. I don't think he's used his inhaler in the past 6 months at all. My oldest daughter had severe social anxiety, possibly based on a lot of factors prior to Move to Prosper. She is now a social butterfly. She went to her very first homecoming, had a date. They went in a huge group. It was sad, amazing. I don't know how to act. But then, and this one, she is happy. She has friends at school. She has friends at cheer. She loves going to school. She loves having friends, inviting friends over. Can I have a sleepover? Can I go this place? Or any amount of things with all of her friends. And I would say that the biggest change for me would be that my mental health has improved. I know Dr. Walker mentioned toxic stress. It's it's huge. If I have to worry about paying the rent, or if I have to worry about where the next meal is coming from, how can I really put any type of energy into making sure that my kids are studying? If don't have time, if I'm working 2 or 3 jobs, to volunteer to make sure that the teacher knows my face, the teacher can come to me if there's an issue. And I've seen it happen where if you don't reach out to the teacher may or may not talk to you until April comes and it's parent-teacher conference time. Hey, your kid's failing, and I haven't talked to you all year because you haven't shown any interest. Well, I mean, where is that line? I don't have that issue anymore. A teacher, I'm in the classroom, not as much right now, right? But I'm definitely in the classroom when I can be. I'm in parent-teacher conferences. I'm part of the PTO because I don't have to worry. I have 40 hours a week and I'm done with my job. They get all the rest of my attention. I volunteer with the band, with my oldest with the band, with theater for my middle child. I'm room parent for this one. So they know that if there's a problem, they can talk to me. So everything is better.
That's a wonderful testament. Thank you, Tehani, and that's great to hear. There's a question I'm going to combine with a question, because the upstream impact that I see from the lack of diversity, equity, inclusion, and housing and education is what that looks like when we're adults and I'm in corporate environments and in boardrooms. And one of the questions is, how may we, and this is from Meredith Lawson, how may we help support and socialize your research? What are you sharing? What you're sharing makes perfect sense. We have some in our community with this not in my backyard point of view. And we'd love, Rick, if you could talk about that. And oftentimes we don't hear about the benefits that others get with having more diversity in their communities and in their schools.
Great, that's a terrific question. So thank you, Meredith, and thank you, Kumi, for that. I think that's right. There are enormous benefits to diversity. My background initially was in education, and so I can speak initially to that question. We know from lots of research that when children bring different life experiences to the classroom, the discussion is so much more vibrant, the learning is so much more deeper than when virtually everyone brings the same set of life experiences to that discussion. And so it used to be that teachers would see students from more disadvantaged backgrounds and tell them, don't share. We're going to teach you the way that you should act. Now there's a much more innovative and dynamic process in the classroom where every teacher says to that child, each of us are bringing a little suitcase of experiences, in the words of one researcher. Open up that suitcase, and so we can find out what we can learn from you. And all the elite universities have been onto this for years, that if having a racially and economically diverse environment makes for much better learning for everyone. So what I would tell families in more advantaged communities who are nervous about opening up those communities to people of different backgrounds is you're missing out. Your kids are missing out on a tremendous amount. And in fact, as you mentioned, Kumi, diversity, equity, inclusion in the workplace is a big issue. People are trying to figure out how to make sure that everyone can get along and benefit in the workplace environment. And we know that one of the biggest problems that employers face is that people don't know how to get along with people of different backgrounds. So if you're a family whose child has never experienced difference, and diversity, that child is not going to be well equipped for the new, the 21st century workplace environment. So everyone benefits from having more diversity.
So, Rick, you know this, and maybe everyone on the call knows this, but I didn't when I got involved with Move to Prosper. But our region is the second most segregated of all large U.S. cities in the nation. It's kind of a sad and sobering fact. So, Rick, I was wondering if you could maybe just give us a real quick primer about sort of how we ended up here. What were the policies and attitudes? And then to tag on a question from one of our viewers here, Carl Fowler, who asks, what is the appetite in America for recognizing and supporting economic integration in communities?
You're giving me the really easy questions, I can see. No, so those are both superb questions. The first piece is how did we get here? And many people think that our communities are economically and racially segregated because people want to be with others who have similar backgrounds, or because under the free market system, some people can afford to live in more advantaged neighborhoods than others. And what that misses is that the economic and racial segregation in Columbus and throughout the country has been deliberately and socially engineered by government. So many of you are familiar with the practice of redlining. That happened in Columbus, where government didn't choose to support investment in predominantly Black areas, mostly. Many of you are familiar with racially restrictive covenants, where when someone bought a house, they had to agree not to sell that house to people of African-American descent or other groups. And if you go back to those racially restrictive covenants, they're just horrifying, because they would say you can't build a slaughterhouse that would clearly be detrimental to the neighborhood, or sell to someone who's Black. Putting those two on equivalent footing. And then we had in many communities explicit racial zoning laws that said that Black people couldn't buy in white neighborhoods. The Supreme Court struck that down, and so many communities, including Columbus, adopted policies that seem benign today, but they're the single family only zoning laws that were meant and designed in many cases to keep out African Americans, and today have the effect of excluding low income and working class people of all races. Now, there's nothing wrong with a single family home. Don't get me wrong. I mean, lots of people like to live in them. But what these laws say is that you can't build anything else. You cannot build a triplex. It's illegal to do so. It's illegal to build a duplex. It's illegal to have a small, moderate size apartment building anywhere in this jurisdiction. So that's how we got here. It was a series of government actions. And as to the question of whether there's an appetite for change, a couple of years ago, I would have been very pessimistic, but we've seen change in recent years. So in Charlotte, North Carolina, they recently abandoned this idea that duplexes and triplexes are going to be illegal anywhere. They've opened up the community in that sense. Minneapolis did the same thing on a statewide basis. Oregon and California recently changed their zoning laws to allow different forms of housing because everyone recognizes, or increasingly people are recognizing, that the diversity benefits all of us. And the other piece that we haven't talked about yet is the affordability crisis. These restrictive zoning laws that artificially limit the supply of housing by saying you can only build a single family home, oftentimes on a minimum size lot, ends up driving down supply and increasing prices, so that large parts of the Columbus area become unaffordable to folks. So for all these reasons, we are now starting to see some signs of reform.
That's super powerful. And actually, we've gotten a number of questions in that speaks to the zoning and the cities that you called out in Charlotte, Minneapolis. Really does speak to how some cities are actually improving these problems with housing. I want to go back to, there's a question, a follow-up question from Meredith's question from Raphael Davis. I can't see the end of the name. But he says, as a former litigator who brought federal race-based housing discrimination cases for about a decade, I also grew up in the South attending K through 12 and dealt with real world discrimination starting as early as 3rd grade. How will Move to Prosper address from the students' perspectives the unfortunate discrimination, racial and economic, that some of these children will likely encounter in these more affluent, homogenous schools? I would love to just get your perspective. I also want to share, a part of this isn't just placing people in different places. It really is about embracing diversity in communities. And I think a lot of what we've already heard from Tehani is how her children have flourished in the community simply by changing place. But would love your thoughts on how Move to Prosper, really more broadly, the support you think is necessary to have real impact with these types of, with Move to Prosper and really supporting students in new environments.
Before you answer, Rick, I want to kind of step in and answer some of that. You can see she's so cute, right? But she's got hair that may not look like everyone else's. And my oldest is at work right now, but she's definitely looks Latina. So what we've done, because we unfortunately encountered it, something that my sister, who is a social worker, would call the Afro-Latina socioeconomic crisis. She coined that on her own, but she would come home and she said, I don't understand why they don't like me. I don't know what I did to them. It took about 6 months, and it was a mixture of our children's program that gave our kids some of the tools needed to say, hey, I'm as good as you, and this is why. And not necessarily in those words, but to definitely, be a part, to involve themselves in clubs and the extracurricular things, but also, again, going back to that toxic stress, giving me a chance to really involve myself in the school and show that I can do just as much as any other parent, just because we're from different area or the other side of the track, so to speak. We're here, and this is our life story. And just like you've had XYZ issues in the past, so have we. So being able to be involved and giving not just myself, but via the children's program or the coaching that Move to Prosper offers for our children, gave us all the tools to really integrate into the neighborhood and find all, do birthday parties or be invited to birthday parties or, dances like this past week with my oldest, or have them just hang out and play basketball in the park down the street. All of those things, there's a lot of emphasis placed on that as well.
Thank you for that answer, Tehani. I mean, that's the points you make are so important. In addition to the coaching provided to families in this program, I think it's vital that there be coaching for teachers in schools, coaching for the communities, that they need to provide an inclusive environment. That's the evolution we've seen in this country. It used to be diversity was the focus. Now it is diversity, equity, and inclusion. It has to be all three of those pieces. And we've at the Century Foundation, where I work, we have an organization called the Bridges Collaborative that works with 57 different school districts, charter schools, and housing.
I think we might have some technical difficulties.
Where everyone's excluded.
Back. Sorry, Rick, could you repeat that last part? We froze for just a few seconds.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm saying we spend half our time on how to create integrated environments, and then half on the equity and inclusion piece, because we know that in schools you can end up seeing resegregation at the classroom level, where the honors classes look a certain way and the regular classes look another way. So there has to be so much training to make sure that sort of thing doesn't happen. But the final thing I'll say is that it's people in communities of color know far better than someone like me the possibilities of discrimination that they're going to face in majority white communities. I think that's what makes it especially astounding that, for these 10 spots at Move to Prosper, 300 people signed up, knowing that they may not have a completely welcoming environment, but the benefits, this is an individual judgment, not my judgment, but the families are making judgments that, despite the sometimes terrible prejudice they're going to face, that on net, this is the move is worth doing, and it's tragic that we are forcing people to make a decision like that. But I think many more school districts and communities are recognizing the importance of inclusion, and hopefully we're making some progress in that area.
And Chris has a pretty extensive question. I'm going to kick that to Shiloh, maybe to follow up offline, or someone from the Move to Prosper organization. I did want to ask just one more question. We haven't talked explicitly about this, but even in the pilot, we've seen a marked improvement in children's educational outcomes. And we'd just love to understand, why do you think that has occurred, and how does living in mixed income, diverse neighborhoods affect children?
Well, it's I'd love Tehani to jump in too, because you've got the personal experience with this. But I think it does come back to those three factors that make for a good school. Active parents, highly qualified teachers, and peers who are academically engaged. And all three of those are more likely to happen in in economically mixed schools than in high poverty schools. And so the results that we see, the extraordinary results for low income students who are in economically integrated schools, I think make lots of sense. Just to give you one other research piece, in Montgomery County, Maryland, there was a study that compared two interventions. One was spending $2,000 extra per pupil in a high poverty school versus a housing initiative that permitted some low income families to live in middle class neighborhoods, and then their children attended the middle class schools. And the difference was extraordinary. Over time, the low income students in economically mixed schools did far better because of those ingredients that we see in successful schools.
Well, thank you very much. On behalf of myself and Joy, I want to thank Rick, Tehani for joining and sharing their experience and their expertise, and would love to hand it back over to Amy Klaben.
Wow, that was just an amazing conversation. So welcome everybody from me, and thank you so much to everybody who spoke tonight. It was an informative and inspiring discussion, and I hope you all are as motivated as I am. I want to just comment on one question that was in the chat about the ROI for what we're doing, the return on investment. We get this question periodically, and I know you have to put a dollar amount on return on investment, but when you think about the impact on family lives, the impact on the moms, and them having an ability to improve their economic position, Tehani's talked about that, all that she's doing that then helps her kids. And then think of the next generation, Tehani's grandchildren. That return on investment, how do you put a dollar on that? And so what we're doing now, yes, it costs money. Everything costs money. But if you don't do what we're doing today, think about the alternative and what could have happened to Tehani's family. And she's an example of, you know, the other families that we've served and that we plan to serve, and how much return on investment, if you want to put it in dollar terms. There's obviously the social terms and the lives that are being enhanced because now people can flourish. So I hope that's a takeaway for you. And yes, our research talks about some of those dollar amounts, and we'll continue to do that. So I'm Amy Klaben, and I'm the project facilitator for Move to Prosper, and worked with others to create what we call the pilot for the 10 families. And now we're working to expand our efforts to 100 families. In fact, I'm on the board of Empower 100 and look forward to working with all of you as we raise funds to pave the way for more moms and their children to live in higher resourced neighborhoods. Given the short time we've had together this evening, you have caught only a small glimpse of the research results from Rick and his recommendations for actions. We're sponsoring tomorrow a series of conversations with community and government leaders. If you'd like to know more, please look at the link in the chat box and check out our website. It's not too late to sign up for tomorrow's programs. Tomorrow at lunch, we will be at the Columbus Metropolitan Club, and that'll be streaming live from 12 to 1, and you can always watch it at your convenience. In the chat, there is information on how you can participate tomorrow. We were also on All Sides with Ann Fisher on September 21st. The information about that is in the chat as well. And tomorrow on Ann Fisher, between 10 and 11 or 10 and 12, they are going to be talking about the housing laws that Rick talked about that have created the segregation we have in our community. I loved a story Rick told about us. What we're doing is catapulting people over these invisible walls of segregation and enabling people to make a choice that's best for them, for their own lives, about where they'd like to live. That's what we do, is enable people to have the choice that everybody else has, unless you're lower income. And we want that to break down those barriers. So we're doing it with Move to Prosper. We also need policy change that Rick talked about. So please join us as we try to improve the prospects for children of 100 families in Central Ohio. We welcome your donations of time and money. And one idea for you is to host a small get-together for your friends so they can learn about us. It can be on Zoom or in your living room. You decide. If you'd like to learn more, please contact Shiloh Todorov for her information, and it's now in the chat. Shiloh, give everybody a wave. Also, we'll be sending you an invitation to our December 2 Power of Opportunity virtual cocktails event, so you can hear more stories from our families and learn about how you can get involved in helping us move from 10 families to 100 families starting next year. So for now, hold the date. From visiting our website at Move to Prosper to working with landlords in your neighborhood, we welcome your participation and support. Please look for emails from us in the near future about our efforts. And thanks again to all of the volunteers, supporters, board members who made today and will make tomorrow possible. And a very special thanks to Rick Kahlenberg and the Century Foundation for being with us today and tomorrow and sharing your wisdom with our community. Thank you, everybody, for participating. Have a nice evening.